And we are live for an episode of Dualistic Unity call-in show. This is not the introduction I had in my head for a second. I was like, oh, we're on Raw. We're not on Raw. This is a call-in show, which means that whatever, doesn't mean a damn thing, except that we're taking some calls. And obviously, I just smoked a massive joint, so I'm feeling a little high and looking forward to this conversation. It appears that everything is working just fine. So how this episode works is if you would like to join us, you can do so on the screen. You can join us. You don't have to be on the screen. You can call with just your voice as well. What will happen is that you will go and fill in the form at dualisticunity.com/live, where you will agree, yes, this is an episode. And I'm going to make sure that our appearance isn't mirrored anymore. Bam. Okay, I'm done fiddling with the technical side of this. I'm going to walk away from the microphone. You can hear me walking away from the microphone. And now I'm back. So we don't actually have a set direction with this episode, obviously. It's dictated very much by the audience. If you have a question, you can participate by joining us in the comments section, jumping onto the questions section of Discord. I'm watching it right now. Or just going to dualisticunity.com/live and filling in the form there. Then you can join us on the screen or on the episode for up to 10 minutes, air a grievance, ask a question, share a story, tell an insight, whatever it is you'd like to do. We would love to hear from you. And I'm going to pass the baton to someone else.
Amen. Hop in, steer the conversation wherever you would like. And I really like that we do these call-in shows because it allows other people to share points of view, perspective, and I think there can be, an aversion even to sharing your point of view, your perspective without looking around and seeing like, oh, is someone else sharing this, or is this something that's been expressed or shared or thought about in this way? Kind of like how kids just like go crazy with their imagination and say random stuff, crazy stuff. Like we have I don't know, at least I've had a strong aversion to like just expressing and sharing my point of view on things. And as I say that, like I also haven't. And it's funny how ooh, Graceman, you've got mail. But
accidentally pressing buttons on my phone, typical.
and right, okay, so right there, I'm starting to get into this like, perspectives and sharing your perspective and blah blah blah, and like even being drawn to that, like that's something that pushed me to start on social media. I think was I hadn't really felt like I had expressed my perspective of things, like hadn't have faith in myself or confidence enough to just be willing to do so. And you can almost get so focused on that you start taking those perspectives really seriously, and like everything has a direction. Everything has, a track to go on, a reason for doing things. You do one thing in order to get something else out of it. And more recently, I'm just gaining an appreciation for not needing to have a direction to something. And I think sometimes perspectives can get caught up in being for a reason or for a purpose instead of just like being willing to live your life more with less certainty, with being more relaxed and just like letting it happen instead of like, well, I gotta, be more myself and get my perspective across and make sure that everyone is aware of my perspective and I hold on to it and maintain it and come up with all these reasons to back that perspective and get someone else to understand it and convince someone else. It's like you don't have to do that though. Like you can, when opportunities present themselves, to share a perspective or share an opinion even, because that's something too that like you feel like, opinions aren't as worthwhile. It's like they're as worthwhile as like on the last call, the conversation about everything being concepts versus having questions versus, being willing to just experience reality. And so I kind of lost where I was going with that. I never had a spot that I was going with that. And so now I'm going to say.
That's the point, though.
Exactly.
Right? Because you never left where you are. You're just like, I feel like going on a little adventure. And there's nothing wrong with having opinions. There's nothing wrong with attachments. There's nothing wrong with all these things if you're aware that with them goes a journey. Yep. And if you get too attached to what you're doing, there's a whole reverberation that comes from that. There's the up and down, like it reverberates on both sides of the middle, right? It's like you get the highs and you get the lows.
Yeah.
You want to make this about you? It's gonna be about you, and you get both sides of that coin, right? But with that, you get a lot of experiences. You learn a lot about it. Specifically, you learn there's nothing wrong with that unless I take it seriously. That's really what it is. It's not
So,
trying to get away from it. And I think that's, again, what we've often talked about in terms of non-dualism, that whole idea of like, there is no me. Yeah, okay, I agree with that.
mhm,
But what do you mean by me?
mhm,
Do you mean the you that you're thinking about, or do you mean the experience of me,
mhm,
which is a very different thing?
right,
The experience of me has nothing to do with me personally. It's not a Ray thing.
mhm,
It's whatever happens when something's alive. There's a me doing the thing. It's not separate from everything else, but it has that experience. Right. So that's where, all right, it's all the same me. But then people are like, oh, it's one overarching consciousness. Yes and no. Right. Yes, in that it's all equally parts of the same thing. Like we are all the movement of the whole because we're all individually the whole. Right. We don't know any division because there is no division that exists, but you can see things differently than me. Right. So that's cool. That seems to be part of the whole fucking point of this is seeing things differently. And if that's the case, then there's nothing wrong with seeing things differently about your life and going in different directions. But what do you recognize? Oh, right. It's not about that. Look, there's a whole fucking story here happening that's not about me. And yet I'm fundamental to it. It changes tone. The hero's journey disappears and it ends up becoming a journey of service, not service to others, just service.
mhm. Right. You don't need it to be something specific. You're not making this big sacrifice for anything specific. You're just sensitive to the impact, the influence the influence that you have in what feels direct and indirect. Because you know that there is no separation. And so you don't have to see it to know that it's happening, to feel it anyways. Because you're not trying to define it and gain some specific value or specific sense of certainty from it.
Yeah, it's more like a underlying connection than an overarching. Like I've seen a picture of it, like this guy who's the universe in under the world with his fingers popping up, outside the surface of the earth. And I feel like sometimes when we get caught up and like each of the tips of his fingers being individual
Yeah, I like
people,
that picture, yeah.
and so it's like,
Mhm.
it's still imagery, but it's a way because if it can't be expressed, there's only things that can, represent that sort of connectivity. But is it even an important thing to focus on? It's like maybe see it, understand it, like allow it to help dictate how you live your life, which is just being more relaxed. Because if it is underlying and it's not something you have to find or figure out, which I think sometimes being an overarching connection can feel like something that's out there, it's higher above you. It's like you got to reach your higher self. You got to improve yourself to a point where you are your ideal
You
self.
become something.
You've maximized your potential in all the ways, as opposed to it just being an underlying connectivity that's like already the case right now. It was the case when you were born. It was the case when you were a kid. It was the case when you were growing up. Like you haven't deviated at all. There isn't a spectrum. There isn't a bar that you're running towards or reaching towards. Like you're there the whole time. And that's the underlying connectivity, is just not reaching to be something else so much. But the more rigid and tense we are, the more we're trying to be something and feel better about ourselves or improve ourselves or get somewhere or go on this journey of progress and even overcoming certain things, overcoming certain fears, certain aversions is a part of that, sense of a journey of getting somewhere. It's like, no, it's like you're here now. And, it's like, not to be cliche, but it's already the case. Like it can't be. So anything that you do, express, share, all the perspectives, no matter how ridiculous they may seem to society, it's like, or the world, or anyone else outside of yourself, it's like the absurdity is the perspective that is, restrictive, that is a specific thing. Like that's the absurd thing. If the connection is already underlying, then it can't be, something that's we try to get to. Because as soon as you try to get there, it's like, where are you going? Where are you trying to get?
Well said. Absolutely. All right. Hey, we have a question.
Oh,
Boom. And it's a question from the social episode that this person was nice enough to bring forward into this one because we didn't get a chance last episode. How do you accept the absence of control and let yourself ease into situations that seem like mind traps that you create and react to? That is a great question. I love this question. I am going to let you guys answer this question. I'm going to go grab my coffee.
Yeah.
jump in anyways is what comes to mind, how do I accept the absence of control? And it's just jumping in anyways, because there's nothing that I can tell myself that's going to make me feel better about the absence of control. It's just jumping in despite not knowing, and kind of just letting things unfold and trusting myself. I guess that helps is, having faith that things are just going, things are just moving, and I don't really need to define it, or I don't need to know exactly what's happening or what it means or what I want it to mean. It's just I jump in anyways, and I trust myself. I trust things to work themselves out.
Yeah, I think with going into changes and doing new things, living your life differently, like that lack of control is still there if you're doing familiar things. And I think over time, it can feel like it's more under control because it is familiar, despite the not like rewards, but just the fullness of experience being diminished over time with familiar experiences. And so that sense of control, like the familiar, the thing that is avoidant of change is what's best, kind of can drain you, but it's like a slow death over time, or like a slow lack of energy, instead of it being, trying new things, jumping into new situations, and finding out what you're made of as you go. Like there can feel like a big dip as you get more familiar, because it's like completely unfamiliar at first. But as you get more familiar with situations or environments or ways of living life, that is, it's not like you gain more of a sense of control, but there is, eventually you recognize that you got that influence. Like you aren't separate from that new environment. And so, although it seems like you're way different because maybe it's outside your comfort zone, maybe it's a new type of situation, the gap between how familiar
Yeah.
familiar you are with the situation can make it seem like there's less control, or that's a frightening thing, versus in a familiar situation, you're like, there's no control, that this is going to get you what you think you want.
Even though
It's
there
like,
is, right? It
yeah.
seems familiar. So you're like, oh, I know this
That too,
situation.
that too. Yeah.
I've
There's no
been
such
here
thing
before.
as
You've never fucking measured. It's a delusion. It's a mirage. But I like in this question where it's like situations that seem like. So if they seem like, I feel like there's a little bit of room for, I'm not sure. I don't actually know if this situation is a mind trap that I've created and I'm reacting to. That's another thing to keep in mind, is like, how sure are you? And can you be okay with being unsure about a situation? Because is it a mind trap? Or is it just that you want it to be, because then it's this thing that you can't handle, but you don't actually know.
Yeah, well said. Because like you turn something into a mind trap, or you assume that like it's something to be figured out. But like a lot of times what I don't realize is how much there's something beyond that perspective, like something that's stemming from me, like my own perspective of a situation that I'm like glazing over, that's causing a response in another way, or for other fears to pop up. But it's still oftentimes when I do relax or realize, maybe I don't know. What if I'm wrong? Maybe that's not the case. Maybe that isn't a guarantee. Then it's like I can more clearly realize where a lot of that comes from, which is like my own perspective of a situation. And so when it's like I have a perspective of a situation and it doesn't feel like I have so much control, it's like all these fears have the opportunity to almost validate my underlying perspective. Instead of looking at that, then it's, and just my response to being like, how am I doing? I'm doing well right now, doing well. It's like there is like a root to it. And I think that's influence is like our immediate response to whatever we're doing. Because if we do have a specific response that maybe is more tension or aversion, it's like fears have a way of arising or feeling stronger.
Right. I like how you said that, like our immediate response is kind of like the roots, because if we judge that immediate response, then what festers and grows is like this very scarier plant. But if we don't judge it, then that initial response can just become, can grow into more self-faith. So it's almost like you're growing either a fear plant or a faith plant. And the root of all of those plants in your garden, your mental garden, are those initial responses. Those initial responses are the seeds that grow into more plants of fear or more plants of faith.
Yeah. And that's kind of the practice, like continuing to be able to recognize those spots where it's like, oh, I do have this opinion of the situation. I do have this perspective. I do have, thoughts about a situation, and then thoughts about other situations that aren't happening right now. Like any thought about a situation or like another place to be, another life to be living, like, they say comparison is the thief of joy. But like in any moment, you can compare yourself to someone else. You can look at someone else's life. You can see how they're living with things, especially with social media being so prominent right now. Like it's so easy to look at social media and be like, oh, they're living life better than I am. I wish I was living like that. I wish I was doing those things. I wish I was taking part in that experience. And like, there's no guarantee of anything out there that's any different than what you're doing right now. But if that is the focus isn't here, making the most of here, like that sense of not having control, I think gets a lot scarier, as opposed to like when your attention is here, it's like there's more opportunity for influence. That lack of control doesn't seem so scary when it's like, oh, but there is influence. I can make the most of the situation that I'm in right now. I don't have to judge myself. I don't have to measure how I'm doing. I don't have to assume that I have to act a certain way or live up to anyone's perspective or expectations of, a right way to live or a correct way to act. And if you also, which I've realized recently, like don't feel like you're constantly trying to get people to like you or like not dislike you and trying to say things in order to guarantee a certain perspective, like there is a lot more that's on the table too. Like you can relax a lot more. So there's a number of things that allow us to get in our own way and make that lack of control feel a lot more scary. But I think influence is helpful to me, for me to keep in mind when I do get caught up in that.
Now, I just got back with my coffee, so I'm assuming you were still answering the question up here.
We
Yeah, good answer, but that leads to the next question. So we're talking about influence and letting go of the need to be liked or even disliked, right? And the question here is, how can we begin to spark conversations about non-duality with people who are completely strangers to this topic? In an ideal world, they listen to the entire DU podcast, but where should I even start? And I would say that it's not about necessarily starting anywhere. I think it's very much in the little things that you do based on whether or not you are perceiving the other as being an influence, because that's what it is you're letting go of other people, living relative to an idea of other people that you must have people there for. So when you let go of that, I think that you start to act differently. And what I mean by that, just give me 1 second here. I'm having some technical difficulty. So as you stop living in a way where you're interacting for the perception of other people, you start to act more authentically. You start to act more for yourself. You start to do things so you can live with your choices rather than so the people that you perceive to be looking at you can live with your choices. It changes things in terms of your authenticity. So you're letting go of this perception of other people and living according to it, which brings you to this closer to this sense of unity that we're always talking about. And this answers the question I think that this person is asking regarding non-duality. It's not about talking about non-duality or even introducing people to the topic of non-duality, although I understand where that intention comes from, because man, I was all about it. Not calling it non-duality by any means, but just talking about duality as a whole, because duality is an important fundamental part of all of this. It's the experience we're having. But if you really want to embody the message or have an impact that's not dualistic and divisive, it's not about talking about non-duality. It's about being unified in yourself, which is the experience that you're talking about there, about not being liked, not being disliked, but actually being whole and fulfilled in yourself, in every action that you have, in every interaction that you have, in every relationship that you're a part of. Just being whole in yourself, because that makes a ripple that changes things. So I think it's very much just about being yourself. And if you want to talk to people about non-duality, it's really important to ask why. What is the goal there? What is that doing for you? Is it giving you a sense that we're directing them in a certain direction? Because what's to say they're doing the wrong thing? This is all unified already. We're not trying to unify it. It's already doing something on its own. It's our inability to align with it that makes it so hard for us to deal with. So judging somebody or rather trying to direct them in a certain way, as much as it's well-intentioned and it makes sense to a certain degree, it also comes from a place that is ultimately divisive, in that they're them and you're you, and you know better, right? And so, and I do like the addition to this question, in an ideal world, they would just listen to the entire DU podcast, but where should I even start? And you know what? Yeah, that's a good one. But I just want to say, in an ideal world, it's really just if they could just encounter you, not needing anything from them, even for just a minute, to actually just have an interaction with you where you're being yourself and they're being themselves, whether they are perceived to be enjoying themselves or not, just to recognize that whatever's happening is happening because it's happening and you're a part of it, and your resistance to it just adds to the distortion. That's far more powerful than the podcast will ever be. Far more powerful. And so that said, though, do introduce them to at least season 1 if you can.
At least episode 1. And that is much appreciated. But yeah, I likewise had and you can hear it probably in the podcast too, like early on, I really enjoyed, I had the perspective that it was about spreading message, kind of like a religion in a sense. Like it was a belief, it was a perspective, it was, lack of beliefs, but it was still, there can be a lot of yourself in that conversation, a lot of yourself maintained. And it's not to say there's anything, wrong with that, but it can be another avenue of getting good at something and, thinking there's someone to convince people to convince of something. And it's very far from the action, the experience of just being yourself, of not trying to convince someone to be or do anything, because then it's it's almost feels immediately reflective as you're trying to convince yourself to be something, you're trying to convince everyone else to be something. If you're not trying to convince yourself to be so much, and you're not trying to convince other people to be so much, like vice versa, they end up going hand in hand. And so that fulfillment, like we were talking about yesterday with camping, is like your experience, like doing it for the experience, like having this call-in show for the sake of having a call-in show, to talk about things, to have questions, to get people to call in. Like, yes, there are byproducts of this. Like maybe we gain some audience members, maybe people hear something they resonate with, but it's not this intention to like convince people of anything. It's just, you know, a roundabout. Their group episodes are called roundtables. Like it's just a conversation. There isn't a direction. There isn't something to follow. There isn't like a right way to be. And so if you're taking that in the way that you're living your life, that's so much more felt, I think, than trying to, you know, direct a conversation in a certain way.
Mhm. People can feel it, you know, the conversations I've enjoyed the most are the ones that had no goal, no agenda, you know, there wasn't this, you know, this weighted expectation that I needed to convince them or that they needed to concede to my point. But and you know, hilariously and frustratingly enough, what would end up happening is that, you know, I went the route of trying to find the perfect conversation icebreaker, you know, because I was like, I had invested so much time and so much identity in certain perspectives. And so I thought that, you know, I had made the best, most rational conclusion, and I wanted to share that, and I wanted to feel better about, you know, where I was. And so I would try to be as creative as possible, and it wouldn't work. And I in retrospect now, I feel like people could feel that intensity, that pressure, that expectation that I was so adamant to you know, achieve. And then once I started to, you know, not care, you know, not care where the conversation went, you know, those things that I wanted to talk about so adamantly would just naturally come up because I was still interested in them, right? So instead of it being like, oh, I need to find a way to bring up non-duality, it's just like, I just happen to have been reading a new book on non-duality, and somebody's like, hey, what have you been up to? And I'm like, oh my goodness, I've been reading this book and it is fascinating. And then just sharing my interests happened to share some of the things that I wanted to discuss with people. But when it stopped being the goal and it just started to be a natural expression of what I was already doing, it was effortless and it was well received, because I think people could feel the lack of expectation, the lack of needing to prove something. And so it was just more well received and more easily shared, not necessarily given, but embodying it is the best thing that you can do. And certainly people get curious. And that's another thing that surprised me, is that people would see that, you know, I didn't have a goal. And so I'm spending a lot of my free time helping them. And they're like, you know, what's in it for you? Like, why are you invested? Like, why are you thinking about, you know, helping me and not really asking? And it's like, well, you know, I've just been thinking a lot about how many times I did only think about what I was getting out of it, and how that made the experience hollow for me too. And that just doesn't seem as worth it anymore. So now I'm just exploring, just helping and doing things just because I feel like it, like for the hell of it. Like, I'm just gonna help you because I feel like doing that in this moment. Not really gonna think too hard about it. And then they'll be like, oh, you know, why is that? And then you can naturally bring up the podcast episodes that you've been watching. It's like, oh man, I've been exploring this, and going to the Discord and chatting with people about how often we people please, and how often that would lead things to being more tense and difficult, and just having this ongoing conversation. And so you can just share that you're having an ongoing conversation, and just not making it, you know, not trying to come up with formal limitations to the conversation, but just embodying it and sharing it as it comes up naturally. I think that has more of an impact.
That's it. Absolutely. Appreciate the question. We have people in the queue.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. All right. Who do we got here? We've got, of course, I can only look at the email record to see what the order of entry is. Aha. Oh, this will be good. Mary Kate.
No.
Mary Kate recently joined us in Denver for a fantastic retreat. Frankly, it was just a hell of an experience, and it's gonna be nice to catch up with her.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Mary Kay.
Ooh,
Hey.
hello. Oh, that was fun. I'm scared. I've never done this, but this is fun. I'm
All
excited.
right.
Oh, am I muted?
No, it's us. We're
Oh,
on our speaker,
okay,
I
cool.
think.
Hi,
Hi.
Yay, hey.
how are you guys?
Doing great. Just caught up with the speaker thing, so I'm feeling much better.
Cool, yeah. I was trying to figure out the YouTube to the Zoom thing, which was a little like a fun thing. And you also have to click the link, which thank you for mentioning that, Marie. That was helpful because I was just staring into the void. Yeah, so this is exciting. I've never done this. I've listened, but I right now have writer's block. I haven't written in about 9 days, and that's like a new record for me. And that's okay. But I told myself anytime that I like had that like block, what I thought was a block, maybe it means you just have to like amp it up and like talk about what you're writing. So it's funny, after one of these one of the Patreon calls, I've been trying to write this thing about like demons and fear and like this whole like little bit that I just couldn't get out of me. And then out of nowhere, I wrote it in 30 minutes. Like I just got it out and like I have it. So I figured maybe if it's cool, I could just read it really quick and then
We'd
maybe
love you to.
Yeah.
chat. That would be cool. Okay. I don't think I'm gonna throw up, but if I do, then that will be good for views potentially.
We'll flip this.
You
for
got
sure.
this.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it's good. I'm excited. I'm gonna read it. It takes like 3 minutes. So thanks for listening and we're good to go. I'm just stalling. It's okay. So this is called Etched Bones for Dissipating Demons, which sounds pretentious in my opinion, but that's okay. It's just yeah, I'm gonna read it. It is good. Yep. Okay. Okay, here we go. So I made a call recently that I haven't made in a while. A friend to listen and ease what I was diagnosing as ailment. Do you do exorcisms? We laugh at the poignancy and absurdity of my often flashing questions. I wait too long to talk and let it bottle as the demons I name grow hungry for more to triumph over. I made the call because I made the demons again. I named them like I did in a past volume of expression, what I call poetry, but the greats may call shit. I haven't heard that in a while. She meant the exorcisms, not that I am shit, although I feel like a shit because I allow it. There's a demon of a new name there. We'll call it shithead. Well, with shithead rattling around, it took me weeks after our needed call to feel the ailment dissipate. I called it fear because that's what I named demon. But then I spiraled to spin the story faster than I could write or feel the bone shift. These demons I named have always been in the muscle, at the heart of me, the living. But after our call, where I confessed to a gazing God like me that I am the conqueror admitting to being conquered, only then did I see the creation of me. I am the creator of demons, and I have left them to rattle with the bones of me. They became their pens to write terror at my core, to name me fear, to strip worth with each etch. The bones I wish to dry and set out like chimes in the wind. I don't want them to be wet beneath the skin and the muscle and the blood of me. I want to yank them and read the etches of the demons I named. Shithead the latest friend to etch me good. They have signed each part, and if I mutter aloud, they may dissipate into something other than triumph. They may reflect peace with being boneless, with removing triumph and loss. I worry of being spineless, as I was named once, but after my call for exorcism, I feel the demons dissipate into the bone. The very core of me grew from the tail, and then the bone made up the spine, and at the very top did the only angel crown me. I crowned myself the demon at the spine, but at the crown, an angel, still spineless with wet bones in the middle of the heaven and hell I created. I see now that my ask to be rid of demons was actually their first call to arrive. I cannot rid what is not meant to leave. I cannot bid goodbye to the little gods inside, the ones I named demons or angels, but only answer to the love they lost. Those small past parts of one that force us to etch on walls and make art of pain. My demons are my little gods rattling around, etching themselves to cry out presence, that I am here. I am not ailment, they sing. From the spine to the crown do my demons and angels sing loudly of what fear was. So now instead of naming them, I will let them etch the bones until they dissipate into what they create. I will make art of this pain, and when you read it, you will weep as well, not for the exorcism to rid you of named demons. You will crown yourself angel and damn yourself demon over and over until you dissipate too. until you create and share as the storyteller between exaltation and damnation. The middle of life is the presence of it, the now. You need not feed your fear, but you must etch your bones as the demons do. Only then can we dissipate our stories and bear love beyond fear. You will sit with wet bones, wishing them dry, but faithful to your dissipating demons, almost missing fear as love waves through to kiss your scratched bones, all etched with the language of love you had forgotten. Remember, the demons you name must not name you, but they will remind you to let all pass until all passes. Demons dissipate just as angels fall. You, the great middle of hell and heaven. You, the great demon of angels. You, the middle of now. You, with the little gods rattling and dissipating. You at peace with pain, letting each etch tattoo a story you will never read. I haven't heard that in a while. We laugh at the absurdity of returning to our forgotten demons and storied bones. We laugh at how we call on things we forget to remember. We laugh as our bones rattle and we forget what we named again. We remember to laugh as we dissipate, demons rattling and angels falling. The tattooed bones once named fear, now known as love. That is all that remains in that craving now. The very one we will forget until the demons we love start carving. Now, that moment is the heaven us gazing gods create angels and demons for. You will always remember the rise and fall, crowning your angels and damning your demons. But the middle of now is where we laugh despite all dissipating. Shit, that was it.
Wow.
Ooh.
That was a
Yeah.
that was epic, Mary Kate.
Thanks.
I-
That was
Thank you.
tough.
Thank you. That was incredible.
Yeah, I don't like, so the whole summary kind of it is like you're gonna damn yourself forever, right? You're gonna call yourself a demon, and then you're gonna like exalt yourself up, and you're gonna be like, oh, I'm so amazing, I'm this, that, and the other. And like you're gonna go from like the ebb and flow of the high to the low, but if you kind of remove it and you don't name them demons and you don't name them angels and you just let them be, they're always going to exist, and you get to exist then. And you get to see that whatever you create from that in-between period is kind of like that lasting mark. So maybe you think that you're stripped bare, or that you want to like remove your bones, or you want to dry them out, or you want to dry yourself out, but like they're all etched with stories that like you'll never fully tell, but they're still there. So yeah, kind of
That was
fun.
beautiful. That was fantastic.
It was fun.
Yeah. Throughout, I was feeling like the build of certain fears like kind of popping up, and then like halfway through is the shift where it's like they're gonna be there. It's not about necessarily overcoming or trying to feel really good. It's like, yeah, as you said, that spot is like where life's happening when it's not
Mm-hmm.
trying to do one or the other or like overcome one or the other.
Mhm.
Definitely live our
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah, I think that's like we talk about nirvana, we talk about heaven, we talk about like all these places to get to, and I think it really is when you just like take a moment and you just sit in silence. Like I think even from the retreat, like there was a moment where I was just sitting under a tree, like looking up, and I was like, oh man, all the networks of things that like I never even considered, and like the ebbs and flows, and like you need the ups and the downs of it. Like you need to know what a demon is, to know what an angel is, to know what neither of them are also. So it's fun. It's kind of fun.
It's fulfilling in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was beautiful. That was really good. And I enjoyed just letting the demons do their thing, recognizing that they're not doing anything bad. They're serving their purpose.
Yeah.
We all end up being kind of a unique expression in that. It's a good process. That was beautiful. I'm really grateful that you shared that with us. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it was fun. It was like a good exercise because like I've done some poetry things in person, and like that's a little bit easier because you can kind of like feel the flow of the room and like what other people are talking about. But like to jump into it cold is kind of like an exercise in this, and like letting what the words I'm saying are like be. And no, I think it's been like a wild ride of like not talking so much about writing, but actually like expressing it. And I wonder if there's probably a ton of people out there that tell stories immaculately. And, maybe it's just expressing that. And this is a good platform for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to whatever comes next.
Mm-hmm.
But, we were talking about writer's block, and it's just, what are you expecting of yourself other than to just write something?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just write something.
Yeah. Just get it on the page.
Yeah.
It's funny. I saw Neil Gaiman like said once that like to be a writer is like to be a journalist first, and then to be like a writer is to walk down the road naked, you know, and this was kind of like part of that exercise, which is basically like take your coat off, run down the street and see what happens, because like you're never gonna know if you don't give it a shot. And like you gotta give it a shot. So I think we're all storytellers.
That was amazing, Mary Kate. It was beautiful. I'm so glad that you shared it with us. It felt like you were in the midst of like being a captain on a ship and amidst this storm, and then at some point it feels like we went underneath the water, and although you could still see the tumultuous sky and waves crashing, you could feel that calm stillness beneath the surface. And so it definitely felt incredible. Thank you so much for sharing. I look forward to hearing and seeing more of your writing.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I got a lot of it. I got some fun ones, some weird ones, yeah, and I didn't throw up, so like
Right, victory.
Bonus.
Yes.
not puke on camera today.
Hell
Yeah.
yeah.
There's always next time.
I know, right? I'm looking forward to it.
wouldn't mind it on our side. Definitely don't hold back for us.
That's right.
Yeah.
The beauty of Zoom.
That's right. Keep
Yeah,
it close, stay ready.
right? Like a little like puke off camera. Yeah, no, it's good, but
It's all good.
Are
yeah.
you publishing these anywhere?
Yeah, I'm working on it. I got a couple like editors I'm talking to. I have like a couple volumes, and I'm working on my third one now, and I want to do them all in one swoop. So it's just showing them, I think that's part of it, because it's like feels so close, but maybe that's why they need to be shown, because like they weren't meant to be shown. So maybe they could be seen.
Usually those are the ones that hit the hardest, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well,
that's it. That's all
thank
she
you.
wrote. Thank you.
We appreciate you being the first person on our call-in show today as well.
Yeah, fun. Fun.
Absolutely. And we're
Great.
going to see you at the upcoming retreat in November.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited. I saw you mentioned whale watching too, because I was like, I love some whales.
Oh yeah, we chartered a boat for 3 hours.
That's the perfect amount of time, I think, to look at whales. High, potentially too. So yeah.
Oh yeah,
You know it.
absolutely. No other
Runs like-
passengers, just us.
Yeah. Whales and joints. I think that's a good combo.
Yeah.
Whales and weed, man.
Whales.
Whales and, yeah, whales and weed. There we go. What an
That's
opportunity there. for
Doobies and dolphins.
Absolutely.
that.
That's
Yeah.
We're going to Miami for that one.
Another trip.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, thank you again, and we'll see you on Patreon later on, maybe.
I'll be there. I'll
Awesome.
see you guys. Bye.
Mary Kate.
Wow. And you can tell from the comment section, anybody who's watching this on Twitch or YouTube Live, that that was well received by everyone. That was beautiful. It was great to be able to listen to that. Thank you so much, Mary Kate. We really appreciate you being here and just sharing that with us. We have more people in the queue. Wow. The next one, I'm gonna again go by order of submissions here, just because that seems fair. Aha, it's Jazz. Bam. And Jazz, of course, has also been to the Denver retreat recently, so comes back with tales of adventure.
That's right.
Very excited.
Hello, Jazz.
And will be joining us in Port Alberni.
Yes.
Right.
As
as
well.
Else.
Oh, yes.
Bring us a sun.
Jazz, what the fuck? How's it going?
Can you us?
Earth.
Hi.
Hello. Hello.
Hey. Just pretending not to hear us.
I wouldn't put it past.
Right?
I wouldn't put that move.
Oh, can you? Can you guys hear me though?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Good. Glad. Glad I can make it as well. That was awesome. The story that MK shared, I was resonating with it a lot, and just the stories that we tell ourselves about who we are and what we're doing, what role we're playing, it can get so much in the way, of just being ourselves and showing up as we are. And so, yeah, that hit really hard. I appreciate you sharing, MK. And I appreciate all of you as well for just showing up as you are, being yourselves, and in whatever way that is. And I don't know, I feel like there's so much to take in from that. and not just necessarily from you guys, but from everyone around me, in every moment. Um, Regardless of whether they're listening to the podcast or not, there's always an opportunity to actually listen and actually hear the stories I'm telling myself, the stories people are telling themselves. I don't know, just the cycles of process that are unfolding, and actually give a shit. Because I think it's been difficult for me to give a shit when I have been so caught up in my own shit, you know? It's like there's so much already happening that I'm sorry, like there's no space for you.
Yeah.
You what do you mean you're more than scenery?
God.
Right. Is that your talking?
Right? You're supposed to be over there.
Why are you doing what I want you to be doing?
Right.
God, why don't you live up to my expectations? I'm mad now. That
It's
shouldn't
your fault.
be.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Be me. Be me.
I
Did you
love
not
that
read the
stuff.
script?
Yeah.
Damn it, I worked hard on something.
I sent it to you a
Week
couple of
early,
weeks ago.
You can memorize.
I did not approve those edits. I did not approve those edits. Damn it.
On rogue. He's gone rogue.
Background
Get
character
off,
trying to
get
take
off.
up stage time. What's going on? Chaos. No, but it's taking things way too seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I don't know. I guess I can just go into it. I want to talk about the retreat that I was on, that we were on, that we were all on.
Hey,
Was I there? I don't know.
you have no proof.
Yeah, apparently. I mean,
I'm
I don't know
sorry,
if you were there, but I did see some face that looked similar. But no, that was an important retreat, I think, because I had been taking a break from retreats just to spend some time by myself, spend time doing what mattered to me, which was just being here in my living room and just whatever I was avoiding, and taking those driving lessons, taking those swimming classes, and just pushing myself and going and doing the things that I was avoiding. Because admittedly, after every retreat, I felt like a low where I was like, oh, can't wait for the next retreat. And it's like, but my life can't just be DU retreats. And I don't want it to just be that. I don't want it to just be the next thing, you know, whatever the next thing is.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be that. It can be just wherever I am, whatever I'm focused on.
Mhm.
If it's a shower that I'm taking, then that's what I'm doing. I'm taking that shower. And if I'm here talking, then I'm here talking about whatever it is that I'm talking about. It doesn't have to be anything specific, but I chose to go with the retreat because it's been on my mind, and it was a blast. It was, whew, oh my God. Someone asked me what the trippiest trips I've had were, and I would say the last day of that retreat was probably like, I mean, no, not probably. It was amazing, and it was scary, and it was exciting, and it was powerful, and it was honestly everything, because I was kind of allowing myself to be everything. And so just seeing what came up, just seeing the fears and the desires and all of those things that are at the forefront, but that are not necessarily seen when I am holding on to an idea of myself and what I should be doing and where I should be, they were all coming up. So voila. It's like just the doors opening to me, and not necessarily just me, but to everyone, because I wasn't judging myself as much, so I wasn't judging everyone around me as much. Even if I were holding on to ideas of people, that was also easier to see when they were being broken down, and when I was just alone and scared and vulnerable and myself, and who the hell knows what that leads to, right? So there's no certainty in that. But that is also very freeing. It's very powerful, and it has a flow of its own. And I spend so much time thinking about it, thinking about all of that, you know, because maybe there's something there. Maybe there's something under the crosshairs that I can check off and be like, woo, there we go. That's another hit of that dopamine rush that tells me that I'm doing something well. And yet, right after comes the crash. Pretty much right after, even if I don't notice it, because it's always an idea that I'm holding on to of what is happening. And when I have that, then I have some certainty, and it's never that. Literally never that.
So
Literally, like, yeah, yeah.
that
There's
funny?
just so much to it.
Yeah.
And any idea that I have is just like a concept. But when I'm letting go of that, then there's this I mean the thoughts keep going, right? It's just about me moving forward, me doing whatever I'm doing, me continuing on. And I think there is a lot of potential in that. There's a lot of excitement and a lot of chaos. And I don't know, it's just me, right? Um, I think it's just interesting to see how much I can hold myself back from being myself when I am thinking about myself, and how little I have to do that because I don't have control. Someone was asking earlier, and I was kind of listening in as I was getting ready after my shower, but about how to deal with the lack of control, or that's at least what I perceived, how to deal with the lack of control, how to accept it. And for me, it's just been that I don't have it, but accepting it as much as just going on doing whatever it is that I'm doing, and that's it. And then afterwards, it's like, oh yeah, I was doing that to get somewhere. And I can tell that when I have the self-honesty to be like, to be here and to be honest with myself about how I'm feeling, about what's coming up, and recognizing that all of that may have come, not entirely sure, but may have come from me holding on to some idea of where things were going to go from some intention that I had set earlier. And the idea that I could ever be sure about where things were going to go based on an intention that I set here can be ludicrous. Sure, I have the opportunity to do this, and my hand is now up, but that doesn't mean that you guys are going to like me for it. That doesn't mean that you guys are going to scorch, I don't even know, scold me for it, or think any particular way about it. I can have my clothes all the way out here as I unpack, and that still doesn't tell you guys anything about me. It doesn't tell me anything about who I am either. It's just life being expressed, and I'm excited. I'm excited for it.
I'm stoked. I enjoy that because basically it's just right. I've banked on so many ways of feeling certain, and they all fucking went, ass up. And finally you're just like, well, the only option I really got left is to not do that. To actually just fucking wing it and see how life turns out. And what you find is that it's everything that you were hoping for by pursuing false certainty. It's even more. Because all the certainty you were looking for, all that happiness was always going to be short-lived. It was always based on control, right? So it's an entirely different kind of fulfillment you find. It has nothing to do with being happy or peaceful or anything else, and everything to do with just being what you are. It's cool.
I've definitely found that, like, looking forward to things, it was like I realized how much I've done that throughout my life that went hand in hand with being afraid of future things, and so much of the gratification was looking forward to it, or like so much of the fear was leading up to the situation instead of being, like, say, excited for a vacation or some sort of trip or something. Like when you're there, yeah, there is, maybe more fun, more comfort, more whatever, but you do start to see that, like, that experience of doing that thing, whether it's something you're excited for or afraid of, isn't any different than any other situation. Isn't any different than, like, eating a sandwich on a bench, and like I've definitely realized that you know, if there is that sensitivity, there isn't so much need for control or like trying to hold on to a sense of control. But yeah, I definitely look forward to things a lot and like use that as ways of feeling better instead of the situation itself. So I resonate. And that was
Yeah, no, it's wonderful to watch you, Jazz, as you're embodying this. It was so much fun to hang out with you at the Denver retreat a second time 1 year later. It was like it was such a great surprise because at first, we were there and then you're like, Jazz is coming, Jazz is coming. We're like, hell yeah. And just being able to work with you, hang out with you. I'm very much looking forward to just seeing where this goes, but not too much because I'm having a lot of fun with all of you here right now without knowing what it means because we don't have that control and we never did. And yet we still ended up here. And that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Jazz, I just want to say thanks for calling in. This has been great. And I hope we're going to see you in Patreon after. Just want to say, though, stoked to hang out with you out here in Nanaimo again when you come out next month. Karaoke, you can fucking live it up. It's going to be great.
and there may be
Thank you guys for having me.
Always.
great to see you,
But,
Jazz.
we will see you in a little bit,
That's right. See you soon.
everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Jazz.
And we have more people in the queue. I do want to mention very quickly that Jazz is very much responsible for everything cool that happens on our community Discord. If you haven't checked out our community Discord, go and check it out because again, it's pretty fucking cool. There's all kinds of great things. There's a bunch of different threads for different topics. There's games, there's movie nights, there's all kinds of dope shit, and it's totally free. So shout out to Jazz for all of the work that they've done with us and all the work to come. And they're just a good friend. So next, we're going to move on to Tamara. This is going to be great. Looking forward to this conversation. Tamara filled in the form and said she would like to discuss surrendering in all the ways.
Tamara,
Hey, Tamara.
Hello.
what's up?
Hi.
Great to see you.
Hey, sorry about that. Changing my audio. I'm trying to think about sitting on a park bench eating a sandwich, Andrew. This is exactly like sitting on a park bench eating a sandwich. So that's what I'm feeling right now. I'm gonna pick up where what Jazz put down and keep running with it because I think I'm experiencing something similar but different. Of course. And the last season that I've been going through, and I would say, let's call it 6 months, has been a season of letting go, like massive letting go. And although it was challenging, there was a real knowing that that was totally right. It felt so aligned. It felt like there was almost like it was just feeding itself, like in its own death. Like it was just wonderful. And I feel like I gained a real sensitivity in how to move and be and live from that place of letting go. And then the really funny thing is this week, there's like this new energy that's coming online that is different. And it's big and it's like expressive and it wants to move and it wants to make things. And had this like moment last night where I'm like, oh my gosh, I know a thing I want to do. Like I got really excited because there's this thing that I want to do, I want to make. And I got all excited and I'm, my mind's just going and shared it with a friend who I kind of call as part of my my bullshit immune system. There are many of you. Thank you. You are also part of my bullshit immune system. And it was really interesting because he caught on to it was turning into a drive of control and like wanting to have certainty about how this thing that I was creating was going to turn out, and I was going to make it, and it was going to be so awesome. And, you know, all of this very future oriented thing. And it was so interesting because I can see how I'm in a new place that I've never been in before. So I've been in that other place where it was always about future and control and going. And then I went through this last 6 months, let's call it, of like fall apart, let go, completely die. And now I'm feeling like I'm having this opportunity to integrate not the seeking, but this energy, this creativity, this enthusiasm, this excitement, with still keeping like surrender is there, like, and it is such a delicate dance. It is I don't it's really exciting. It's really exciting to go into this feeling of, because I didn't know when this was going to come back. I knew it would. Of course it would, because there's seasons for everything. But now that it's here, I'm really relating to it so differently. It's like, oh man, you know, it doesn't have to be about building a business. It doesn't have to be about getting anywhere. It doesn't have to be about getting to anything. It's just about the sensitivity to the moment that's here and letting that express through me and just seeing what happens. And so I am thankful for bullshit immune systems for keeping me reflecting back, you know, blind spots or just whatever. And really grateful and excited to see what it looks like to be creative, expressive, and bold while also in surrender.
Yeah. I resonate with that in a lot of ways. As you know, everything I've done with Dualistic Unity has been an extension of kind of everything I've ever intended for like half of my life. But it was always in a direction and always willing to accept that maybe what I thought I was shooting for wasn't what I was shooting for. You know, thousands of ideas were like, that's it. And then later on realized, that, oh, right, no, that's not it. And it was always, you know, that sense of freedom. And so you just surrender, you do what you're doing, and then all of a sudden new doors open up and you're like, oh, that kind of goes in that direction. And that still seems kind of cool. And, you know, so it just over time, it's like you find your way, just like, you know, a seedling. You know, it's got to wind its way around sometimes. It doesn't just get to go the way that it wants, but it knows it's going in the direction of something. You know, it's never seen the sun. And it doesn't know what it's even going in the direction of. You know, but it knows that it's just going to keep going. That's part of what it is. All right. So that's very cool. I can resonate. That's what I'm saying.
Sure. Yeah. I feel like that sensitivity goes hand in hand in a lot of ways with self-faith and relaxation. I mean, they all always kind of tie together, but like, you know, in the business we're running, we have a broader sense of a direction in terms of like things we do, sort of, but again, like everything is informative. Like, yeah, we filmed our whole camping trip this weekend and there's going to be videos out from it, but like we also were able to talk about the experience of just doing that. And so that's, I think, unique to Dualistic Unity in a sense. But like this morning, for example, I had a number of things I was working on and doing, and I filmed some clips along my walk to a coffee shop that I worked at. And like, I just really wanted to clip up that video quick and post it and share it and like share an IMO, tag some local businesses. And like, that's something that we're looking at is like local expansion as well. And so I had this whole idea and list of things that like I wanted to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 this morning.
Mhm.
And, you know, I took a shift after a couple and just like edited that video and posted it real quick. And like, we don't know, that video could end up similar to like, you know, just gaining a connection, or one person sees it and they
Mhm.
leads to some other sort of thing. And I think that sense of like a lack of control is where I see it way more as exciting. Whereas for me, like letting go of control has always been this really scary thing. But there is the side that like there's so much more opportunity if it's not controlled, because controlled, or at least from a, you know, conceptual standpoint, for me has always been very specific. And it's like, do this for this narrow outcome instead of throw in and it's a new thing and the opportunities could be infinite. Like you never really know. But being willing to do that can feel uncomfortable at first. Sure.
Mhm. Uncomfortable, but worthwhile, you know. Tamara, you look so light. I'm loving it. I'm loving you sharing this process of surrendering and acknowledging this bullshit immunity system, but also acknowledging the fact, you know, like what you're doing with that information and how you're applying it, and letting go of the things that you used to prioritize. And the bullshit immunity system is saying, oh, that's familiar.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're right. Thanks for the reminder. That was familiar. This looks interesting. I'm gonna go over here.
Right.
And it's awesome. It's awesome to see in action. So like, yeah, thank
Mhm.
you so much for being here and embodying, you know, the uncertain but exciting and worthwhile parts of this journey, this exploration.
Yeah, and we're never going to come up with anything nearly as creative as what can move through us. I mean, I've got ideas, and those maybe get me started, but I can't even begin to know what the hell this is that arrived last night. I don't know what it is.
Nope, just begin.
Keep going.
Right.
As always, you know, just there's a
Right.
song by Perfect Circle called "Eat the Elephant," and
Mhm.
it's just take the bite, you know,
Mhm.
and continue on, and that's it. And you don't know exactly what you'll make, but your whole life is your sculpture. You know, one piece at
Yeah.
a time, it'll become something beautiful. Just put the attention in, and that's all you need.
Yeah, I feel that. It's the masterpiece that you can look at in reverse, but you can't, yeah, you can't can't decide what it's going to be.
Because the mastery comes as you build it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like the pots in the class example, the art class gets split and one group's told to make one pot and make it as perfect as possible over the course of a couple days, and the other group's told make 100 pots, don't give a shit how they look. And by the end, of course, that 100th pot was way better
Stunning.
than the one that the group focused on and tried to curate and spent 3 days like perfecting. The group that just did it without a second thought. It's like the natural evolution, like that's so much closer to intelligence than trying to, you know, control the response based on always what's been known in past stuff.
Mhm.
And way more fun.
Absolutely. I think the word error out of trial and error, because it's really just trial.
Yeah.
Just keep trialing.
Mhm.
Trialing? I like that. Keep trialing.
Right.
Some more.
T-shirts. Keep trialing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tamara, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. I'm glad
Yeah.
you did today's call-in show. And hopefully, well, we're going to see you at some event in the near future, I know, but
Somewhere, somehow.
hopefully we'll see you on
That's right.
Patreon in a bit.
Yep.
Awesome.
See you guys.
Tamara,
See you,
Thank
Tamara.
you. Bye-bye.
thank you. God, I loved these call-in shows. That was fantastic. We do have another person in the queue, which is fantastic. I do want to mention to everybody watching, if you would like to join, you can do so by going to dualisticunity.com/live. That's it. There's a form. You fill it out. It presents you with a link or some phone numbers if you want to call by phone. And then you can join us on the episode. But for now, we're going to move on to Marie. We love chatting with. Marie is often here on the call-in shows and on the roundtables and is a regular part of our community. This is going to be a lot of fun.
I don't think I've ever said your last name. It's fun to say. Bizarre.
It really is. It really is. What a what a dope call-in show this has been so far. I have really enjoyed listening to everybody come on and be like Mary Kay kicking us off with her expression. Like it's just okay, I'm just gonna drop this dope creative. Oh, was it a story? I'm not sure, but it was beautiful.
Epic
Beautiful.
poem.
Yeah.
Hell yes.
Story.
And now we all get to
Journey.
integrate it into our lives. I'm very excited. I'm going to go back and listen to that after the fact for sure.
100%. Yeah, I was like, this needs more times to listen, because there was so much to take in, and each person shared, I feel like, their own ways of expressing themselves this call in, and it's just been resonating so hard. And it's funny because like when you're gonna be calling in and like popping in after all these people, there's like that thought that pops in like, you're gonna have nothing to say, loser. You ain't got shit on it, and it's like just funny to watch the thoughts pop up. And it's just like the demons or like the disillusions we have of ourselves and all the things that will pop up throughout the day. And when we don't listen to them, whether they're positive or negative, and just continue to be, and whatever shows up without it having to be anything, it's just a lot. It just, there's other than, I have no words other than like freedom is what that feels like. There's no need to be anything, or anything to be anything, if that makes sense. Like for us to say it's anything, it doesn't matter. I also liked that just triggered the thought before, I think, that was asked about, maybe it wasn't even on the call-in show, but the live before this, about like why we question anything, or when we know. Yeah, like why is there a need to do anything then? Like what's been fun about listening to all the people that have come on and shared, it's all been from the perspective of why the fuck not. It's like, I'm doing this because we can. And all the different things that are popping up because like people are stepping into the state of mind of like, I'm not doing this to feel the need to be better, to feel the need to be perceived in a way. I'm just doing it because I can, because it's coming from a place of just what's showing up right now, and I'm gonna do that. And it's been really cool to see like what happens with that. And I really appreciated I guess Tamara explaining that enthusiasm too, and what it feels like when like that shit pops off, because like you don't necessarily know what direction it's going to go and what things are going to look like, but you feel that surge of energy, and it's just cool to like ride that wave out. And it's definitely helpful to have this community uh, to share with, because we're all in that state of mind. I was sharing with a friend earlier, like I'm a teacher, so the end of year is coming up and everybody's like, what are you doing over the summer? Like the same questions. Oh my gosh. Like that's a whole other conversation I might come back to too, of going through the cycles of fucking conversation. So how are you? How was the weekend? You ready for the weekend? Oh, happy midweek.
Happy Friday.
Like every time? Anyway, like what the hell?
Broken record society.
What are we doing?
It's
So-
safe. It's just safe conversation. There's no risk in it.
I know. Exactly.
Or at least we think there's no risk in it, while the other person's like, fuck, you're boring.
Yeah.
It's so true. But I had a friend ask me like, "What you're thinking?" I'm like, "I'm not really thinking too much. I like the idea of planning with some friends to go to Vancouver Island. I said I have friends over there now. I just call y'all friends because it was always like explaining, and I'm like, no, whatever. These are my people, and even the people like Ray, I haven't even met you. I've only met Amanda and Andrew once." And most of the community I haven't met in person, but I just have this connection, and it comes from. And I was sharing. I'm like, honestly, I'm like, I don't care what I end up doing, with or without these people, but like with y'all because that they're, just a group of people that I could be my truest self with, and like and be accepted and uplifted in a way because like we're all trying to do the same thing. So it just feels like an uplifting thing that happens. And it was interesting because she's like, "Oh, is this not how you feel around like other people?" Like that sense of, and I'm like, that's funny. I'm like, honestly, lately, no, that's not. I feel like I've been consistently just being myself because I'm just showing up and being them, but like these people remind me of that. I'm like they're the ones that like have pushed me to do that no matter where I am, and I just would really like to hang out with them because it would just be a cool thing to do. But I don't even know why I brought that up. I love thoughts. That's funny. Um, uh, it's just it's a fun ride like when you continue to let go. Like it's so true. Tamara, I feel like we're all feeling that theme. Well, can't speak for everybody, but it's just it's a cool process to go through of like letting go and also like going through these different experiences, um, and sometimes even similar experiences, but coming from it with this different mentality of like really letting go of the fear, letting it drive you, for me at least. Like the fact that like fear was in the driver's seat, or that like I'm thinking of Mary Kate's poem of like the demons once labeled as fear, now as love. I'm like, oh baby. Only because we were giving it the title of fear. We were giving it this weight of it being fear, of this being this scary demon, this thing that's bad, this thing that's instead of just it's showing us more of all the things and it not needing to be any one side, good, bad, scary, comfortable. It's there's so much appreciation for this community. Jesus, I just got a wave of that. Like I saw you all smiling back at me. I'm like, what is this? What are we doing? This is so
Appreciation is built on both sides, Marie. Thank you so much for calling in and showing up and just sharing all of your explorations. And when you don't know what to say, when you have something and you're like you forget, you bring it back around beautifully, and you're like, oh, why did I bring it up? Because why the fuck not? And,
and you laugh through it. I've always appreciated that. Like you remind me so much. Like I can just laugh. I can also do that. But and that sense of fear. Like there's so much certainty. I feel like that goes with that. Like I know I'm afraid of these things. Like do I? We'll see when situations happen. Then we'll find out really, and then it's like opportunity to respond there. But yeah, it can not being afraid of being afraid. Yeah, that can be a big shift.
Because why the fuck not?
Yeah.
Like that's the whole thing. It seems weird that we reject this part of our existence that's quite obviously a big part of our existence. Like we're like, yep, fear is a part of life. Yeah. So don't be afraid of that. Like it just why resist that? And that's just it, is that you go into it, you're like, this is informing me. Because a lot of what we're afraid of isn't that snake's gonna bite me. It's that person's gonna judge me, I assume. You know, and you just start to come to this point where you're like, oh my God, I just created my own horror story.
Right.
Right? It's something I'm afraid of that I just don't need to be. It's not actually part of reality whatsoever. That person's doing, I don't even know what they're doing, which is bothersome even more so because now I could create any story I want. Right? It's like, well, stop doing that. Just stop creating stories. And all of a sudden that fucking fear is gone. Like you just, all of that superfluous shit just isn't there. And you find that a lot of it just doesn't need to be. You know, and all of those fears, while they flitter through your mind, if you don't grab onto them, they inform you about a lot of things, you know, including all of the things that other people might react to, you know, all the things that they're panicking about. It's a hell of a process.
It totally is. I just wanted to also acknowledge and appreciate you three being in the same space, and because it's happening, you keep it off like mute too, or yeah, like you're unmuted the whole time, and it just allows like I love being able to hear like laughter in the moment, and just that aspect of hanging out too is something that I look forward to with retreats or whatever it may look like, maybe in July, hopefully. But it'll be fun to just do the back and forth without the Zoom being a thing.
I have been enjoying the difference in just being able to do this. I mean, at some point we're gonna have to get Jackie up here.
Oh, yeah.
but it's that because it just feels more organic. It doesn't feel as organized. It's just like, oh, we're all just shooting the breeze and we can hear each other and everything else is good. And it's nice. So I really look forward to hanging out with you, Marie. I know I'm the only one of the three who hasn't met you yet, but when we do meet, it's going to be dope.
Mhm.
It sure will be. Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you
excited
for joining us.
for sure. I'll see you all later.
Fuck yeah, that's awesome. We'll talk to you very soon. Thanks, Mary.
See
Thank
Maria.
you.
Ooh, fuck, this has been a good day. Wow.
Great day.
I'm loving this call-in show. And we have a question.
Oh.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
What
This
is the question?
Qual
Is coming from the Ask a Question section on our Discord.
All right.
Discord.
I like it.
How do you unlearn conditioned responses to emotional triggers?
I think recognizing it first, that there is something there, that there is
Mhm.
a response, and like, not to say that there's like a whole played out process over time, but like there is, you know, recognizing things, being aware of things, because I've had plenty of things that I've recognized or become more aware of, you know, whether it's just in being more sensitive to my environment or on a mushroom trip or something that at the time I'm like, oh, that's in potential. I don't really want to look at that right now. And like, and maybe it was because there wasn't a part of me that was ready to do the things, or there were other things that could have needed to play out in before those can be looked at or faced or dealt with. But I'm honestly, I'm totally forgetting what the question was.
That's fair
Yeah.
because it's complicated.
Yeah.
How do you unlearn conditioned responses to emotional triggers? You've got all kinds of shit to work there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, like
I have like a two-part, but I
The
think,
unlearning and then the
Conditioned
conditioned responses.
yeah.
Don't forget about the triggers,
Mhm.
Right. And then emotional triggers.
not just triggers.
Fucking so there's a lot of things. You're like, well, where do we start?
Mhm.
I'd like to start with you. How do you just like unpack
Yeah,
that? It's a good question.
yeah.
Mhm.
Who you want to continue on or shall we
That was,
pass
I
this?
had kind of a two-part. That was the initial part, was recognizing it, and then I think
Mhm.
there's, yeah,
Which is
implementation, which they don't always happen like
right.
right away,
Yeah.
and not judging yourself for it not happening right away
Yeah.
helps it not continue to be the same thing over and over and stay an emotional trigger.
Mhm. Yeah.
Anyways.
You made an excellent, I like where you started with the recognition, because in that creates space. And in that space, you can see that there is more than one option, right? And in that space, you can see that there is more than just the emotional, the conditioned response, right? So it's like, we're in a scenario, I have just been emotionally triggered. And here goes the unfolding of that conditioned response in recognizing that I am responding in a way that feels very familiar and very heavy. I am making space to explore another response. Maybe I don't pick it in that moment, but in just recognizing that I just am in the middle of a conditioned response, I can explore, okay, and where is that coming from? Oh, snap, I was definitely triggered by this conversation, this moment, this circumstance, and this sucks. And it could just stop right there, right? And so you don't actually change anything, but in just recognizing, you've given yourself space to explore another response later on. Because it's not going to be, all done in one moment, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is the unlearning process.
That's just it, is that, the answer is kind of in the question. It's just when you're having an emotional response, ask yourself if it's a conditioned one.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's pretty much it. Like in the middle of it, shit, am I going through the program response right now?
Right.
And that's when you all of a sudden you'll deflate a little bit and you'll look at it and the emotional trigger will start to subside because you yourself have stopped giving into it. You're asking yourself if it's actually the reality that you're reacting to because you think it is.
Mhm.
Right, that's the emotional response. This is absolutely what's going on. This is how I feel about it. But if all of a sudden you're like, maybe it's not what it is, all of a sudden how you feel about it changes. You can't be so committed to it. You can't be so pissed off if maybe that's not the case.
Mhm.
Because then you're just like, why am I so pissed off? I don't actually know.
Shit.
Right.
Just in my head.
I'm curious about a maybe. Maybe I know what's happening and I'm mad as hell.
Down.
That's how I want to spend my afternoon. It's like, grr. Heads, it's going to go well. Tails, it's not. You're not going to find out till later. I'll be pissed just in case. That's one way to go with it. One way to go with it. But that's just it. Is just the recognition, as you said, that you have conditioned responses.
Yes.
That your responses aren't necessarily what you might assume are your own. That very often they're based off of things that you've been taught to value, taught to protect, taught to even identify with. And if you can just recognize that maybe that's the case and really take that in, then you never give in to any response.
Mhm.
You're just like, oh, I don't know. And that's really where you start to see yourself,
Right.
right? That's where you start to recognize how much of what you've done because of a conditioned response that you didn't even know could be there because you never questioned it.
Mhm.
No, surely that is the only way to respond to somebody rejecting me when I talk with them at the bar. Or surely it's the only way to respond when somebody says, no, I'm not interested in you,
Mhm.
right? Or surely this is the only way to respond if I don't get what I want.
Mhm.
It's like, are you sure? Or is it just those things are perceived in a way that everybody else perceives it in the way that they've interacted with you, or at least that's what you've picked up from everything that they've told you, because
Mhm.
you don't know if they actually respond that way or not. You are just making the assumption nonetheless. The
Mhm.
conditioned response is no less an assumption than anything else.
It's always, yeah, always gonna be an assumption based on, and it's just what it's based on. Like, is it, and oftentimes there'll be like other people that come to mind too, if it is based on conditioning, because there was some situation or involvement, be it an organization, school, religion. And so if there is that, arising with it, a lot of times that can be a good indication that it's, conditioned in some way, shape, or form. And that's most opinions and preferences, I think, have an element of conditioning. Sure.
Well, yeah, we're raised in an environment. That environment trains us to be part of it, right?
Mhm.
It's amazing when you look at it. We're just conditioning ourselves generationally without any recognition that we're doing so, which is what makes it so haphazard. Where if we were to look at it like the 7 generations thing that we were talking about the other night, all of a sudden everything you do, you're like, maybe we should take a break and talk about this for a few decades, before implementing it. Like actually sink our teeth into the question and look at it. Before we wrap up today's episode, I very much want to talk about what's upcoming in Port Alberni. This is going to be an amazing retreat, and frankly, I'm really excited. So it goes November 2nd to November 10th. which is great because November 11th was the first day of our first retreat in 2022. Wow. So this is going to be our third retreat at this location. This is honestly, until there is a DU retreat center where we actually get to build the building and it has secret passageways and stuff like that. This is pretty much the closest to my dream location that we've gotten to. It's a beautiful location. It's down by the river. There's a gazebo up near the lodge that it's wood heated, so we get a fireplace going in there. Couches are dope, so comfortable. There are blankets provided in big baskets. There's a pool room where we play pool and we do karaoke. We have a chef throughout the whole thing, so they're going to be making breakfast and dinner and creating a charcuterie board or a lunch board for us. We have classic guitar coming in. We have yoga that's going to be taught by our own Jackie, which is fucking awesome. We go for hikes. We do all kinds of dope stuff. And this time we have added a chartered boat. We are going on a whale watching expedition. And here on the island, you can see two kinds of whales pretty commonly, orcas as well as humpbacks. So this is going to be fantastic. They know where the whales are, obviously. And so it's just going to be amazing. We're always just going to have our own boat. It's not a shared boat. I want to mention that. It's not a shared boat. It's the DU crew and the captain and whoever's helping him out.
Right.
That is pretty much it. So I'm really excited about it because I don't know, the first and second retreat happened at a period of my life that was really winding down. You know, I didn't realize it was coming to an end, but this was very much, you know, the end of a large part of my life. Dualistic Unity went full time right after the first retreat. You know, it was about a week or two later that we started doing Dualistic Unity Raw. And we've been doing episodes like that ever since. And so this is really going to be just an incredible experience. And it means a lot to me. So I know I'm going to be super chatty and emotional and whatnot, but it's going to be great. And right now we already have, I think, 7 guests that are already booked. There's 6 tickets left. There is something this year that we didn't have last year, which is a king room that you can share.
Right, that is new.
That is new, so that's going to be great. That said, we do have one more person in the waiting room. And so before we wrap up this episode, which we will be doing very shortly, we're just going to let them in. What do you say?
Yeah, let's
Sounds
do
good to
it.
me.
Do it. Charles.
Charles.
Charles is going to join us today. What would Charles like to talk about? It's the real question. There we go. Talking about life and meeting a Mormon guy. Awesome.
Okay,
Good place to go.
that's right. Let's dive in. Hey,
That's
Charles.
it.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, sweet.
How are you, sir?
How's it going?
Doing very well. Just got back from camping.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I met a Mormon guy waiting for the bus. His name was Elder Jeffrey, and I thought this would be a fun place to mention it, you know. I haven't had a conversation with him yet, but I would like to meet him and talk to him and just ask him what his perspective on things are, right? But there's a part of me that doesn't want to go into like arguing about like, oh, if he's trying to convert me, am I trying to argue against the opposite and trying to convert him out of the religion or whatever? Like, obviously it's not that deep, but I don't want to fall into that, like just wanting to argue or not being able to take in what people say to the full extent, right? What do you guys think about that?
Oh, yeah.
It's a delicate balance, you know, of thinking, you know, because that's a hypothetical, right? That's a scenario that could happen, but it's there's no guarantee that it will. You know, maybe he's, you know, he's just as likely to be trying to have a conversation with somebody that he knows is not in the Mormon community so that it can be something different and fresh. And, you know, maybe he's the outlier in his community and he's the one that's always bringing up these crazy, you know, conversations. And they're like, you know, and he's looking for somebody that's a little more receptive. And so sometimes you go out of your normal social circle because you are trying to have something different and new, or sometimes you are just trying to bring the point and you're trying to convince, but you can't be entirely sure. When you met him, did he give you any impression that he was trying to convince you of anything when you encountered him at the bus stop?
A little bit, he pulled out his Bible and he said, "Oh,
Oh,
this is the
snap.
Book of Mormon and all that." So I'm like, okay, he's pretty in there. He said
All
he
right,
was from the
he made his
States.
move.
Yeah, right. Well, and he said he was from the States. So I almost want to ask him about like his experience traveling all the way up here because I live in Ontario, Canada. So it's a bit of a hike, right? But yeah, that's a good point that yeah, you never know what's going to happen with anyone at any time, right? That's a good point. Yeah.
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 I also
Conversation. Oh,
so-
go on.
oh, thank you. I was going to ask I kind of wanted to hear your guys's perspective or what you would like define God as. And I know it's kind of hard to describe sometimes, but I want to try and use the word as much as possible now, just to describe everything in the sense of like people are going to have their own solidified idea of what it is. But if I can come in and say, well, how do you know it's not everything that you see, perceive, you can feel or not feel, right? Like, how can you say anything is God in a sense? But I kind of want to hear your unique views on it.
Well,
Also,
I just wanted to say, just
can I
as a
smoke?
preface, I used to walk around introducing myself as God. So very much for the same purpose, like, hey, let's have a talk about this.
Hi, I'm God. How's your day going?
Yeah, pretty much that's how it went.
That'll get the juices flowing. That'll get the wheels turning. Okay, it is.
Oh my God, talk about a conversation starter. Just a little conversation grenade.
Uh-huh.
Throw that in there.
Let's see how this one. We'll move, Cotton. Let's see if this one works out for you.
I did that for years, though. It's just God is what is.
Right.
Right? Like every insight we've ever had about unity or anything else has come down to the awareness of what is. And then we try to describe it and it gets all twisted up by our identity, like our fears and all that other stuff, but it's just what is. And so we are what is.
Yeah. Like I saw a clip this morning of a guy that was explaining the word Yahweh. It's like YHWH, I think.
Yeah.
It's how you say it. You don't use your tongue or your lips. And he was explaining how instead of you saying it, it's just the sound of breath. It's like Yahweh, right? And it's like, holy shit, that's because he said it's what you do when you're first born and what you do on your dying bed, and you don't have to pray to God. You just say his name in a way, you just breathe, and then that's it, right? So I thought that was just like, holy shit.
And that's here, right? Like breathing, you're always here. It's not something you're thinking about. It's not something that's in your head or trying to solve, or even like when someone does bring it back to that, it's hard almost to even have a conversation beyond that. It's not to say it's hard, but like it changes the conversation a lot because it becomes less cerebral. But I did want to say with like approaching people, like I think there's a natural sort of process of like taking an aggressive approach or taking a passive approach. And sometimes people take an extra passive approach and they're just like, I don't want to interact at all about it. Or like, I want to figure out the perfect way to say this. And like, they're both on the table too. I think having an aversion to one or the other can kind of tie you up. Like I've had aversions to both. Like I should be expressing this, or I should not be talking about this as much. And a lot of it's circled around like what I was trying to be or what I thought I was being, like a fraud to even talk about it or mention it. And they're both kind of the process of, at least for me, like having faith in myself to trust whichever, part of that spectrum is expressed, whether it's passive in one moment or like super aggressive in another, and then just learning from it instead of being like, no, I have to say it in a middle of the road sort of way. Like that's found over time kind of naturally, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Years back, I was working at sign shop. I was working, it's a long story. Anyway, my wife at the time had somebody come to the door to door, born again Christian, and wanted to have the conversation. So she's like, "Oh yeah, you should go down and talk to my husband. He's at work. He'd love to have this conversation." I was not having it. And so the person came in the door, and I was just, because I got to this point where I was just tired of sparring over scripture, like, over the entire idea of belief. And so instead I was just like, I think it comes down to the fact that there are days where I feel really clear. Like everything just feels clear. I feel like I'm on the ball. I'm being responsible. I'm aware. And then there are days where I'm not at all. Like I'm just really stuck in my own head. And they're like, yeah, that's true. Like if I don't know how that works, I don't know how to even approach the idea of God. Like if I don't understand when I'm clear and when I'm not, it seems like I'm just reaching for something to feel better because I don't know when I'm clear and when I'm not. So, and it just got right off the God conversation entirely. And I had one of the best conversations with a born again Christian I've ever had in my life. And it was just because all of a sudden it was about existence. It was about being human, going through the state of confusion that goes with it, rather than what the belief is that makes us feel better about that.
That makes sense. Yeah. Oh, I like, I like, I don't know. I like thinking,
I hear you, man. Yay for awareness.
My favorite thing to do.
Yeah. Sorry, I just got lost in like listening to you guys, and then I'm like thinking about how it relates to my life, and I just like I zone back in, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're having a conversation.
We're still here.
Oh,
That's
shit.
right. I hear you, man. But this is why the life experience part is so important. Like I look forward to hearing about how this conversation goes, because we can speculate. I talk about my experiences, they talk about theirs, but yours is going to be completely unique, and you're going to get something out of it that none of us have because we're not having that experience. So I'm really excited to hear what direction your intuition puts you in, because it's one thing to talk about it, but once you're there, that person's going to say something you didn't foresee happening, and you're going to go in a direction you didn't even anticipate. That's the shit that excites me.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, and just the possibility of anything's possible. Even just before I was listening to DU, I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about how even even you watching marbles go down the peg thing that would usually make the bell curve, you can influence them to go left or right. And it's like, oh, well, that just proves right there scientifically that you can affect your reality, right? So it's pretty sweet. And I want to say I appreciate you guys for even making this possible, because you don't see it happening anywhere,
Yeah, that's exactly why we're doing it. And again, thanks to you, man, because without you and the other people we've had here on the call-in show, it wouldn't be possible.
Yes, absolutely.
So thank you, Charles. It's been really nice chatting with you again. Hopefully we'll see you again very soon. Thank you for being the last caller on today's show. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining, man.
And take care.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Charles. Bye.
Whew, we just had a full
Yeah.
call-in show.
Yeah.
Wow, that
Is
was
that
great.
5 or
5, 6, something like that. That was
Thank
a lot of dope conversation. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who could join us today. Thank you for everybody who listened in. Thank you for everybody who submitted your questions in whatever form that you submitted them. If we missed any questions, do submit them in the Ask a Question section on Discord, and we will get to them 2 weeks from now on our next call-in show. But we're going to take a short break. We'll be back on Patreon for a tier 2 call that goes from 8:30 p.m. Eastern time to 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. It's a late call. So if you could join us, we'd love to see you.
Fuck yeah. It's been a blast. Bye, everyone.